Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this webinar. Sundar, thank you for that fabulous introduction. If you people see me moving up the screen, I'm probably levitating by virtue of the words that he used to describe me. I request you to take that with a pinch of salt. Nevertheless, I'm very happy to be here, and I want to thank everyone responsible for making that happen. You know, this format of speaking in public has been a challenge for me. What little experience I have in speaking in public has been in a physical environment. So my experience and my comfort is in that domain, and I've been working towards gaining the same level of comfort and experience in a virtual space. So if I stumble a little bit, if I kind of hesitate and pause, please bear with me and forgive me for that. The moderator, Dr. Ramesh, said that there were some interesting questions. I hope I'm able to respond to them, and I hope they're not so challenging that it leaves me stumped. But if I do get stumped, please understand I'm human as well. It is customary in these difficult times to inquire if everyone is safe and well. Since you're participating in this webinar, I'm presuming that all of you are. But I would like to add at this juncture that the primary responsibility for managing the situation squarely lies with us as citizens of this country. Now, I believe that the government has done an outstanding job so far, and I don't mean to pander at this point, but genuinely I believe the government mechanisms, the health workers, the bureaucrats have really extended themselves in making this happen. But we are a very complex and challenging nation. We have a high levels of population, high levels of density of living, and very dispersed areas. So the responsibility squarely lies with us as citizens to pick up where the government has taken us and make this a very safe place for ensuring economic activity continues, which is fundamentally critical for us to remain relevant and sustained through this crisis. Now, the title of this webinar is about strategies to win the war against COVID. Now, a war is not one broad sweep. It consists of many small battles that have to be won in order to win the war. So I would like to focus on 3 battles in the context of the topic that's been given to me. I will talk about the battle to survive, the battle to protect people, and the battle to grow. I will talk about it in this sequence. Now, the battle to survive, the fundamental goal is about remaining relevant and therefore navigate very cleverly through these troubled waters. Now, the challenge is obvious. Business opportunities have shrunk. The costs have not shrunk commensuratively. So, this is really the fundamental problem. And I realized that it came from left field. It hit us with a surprise. Nobody expected what is going to happen, and even now nobody is able to say how it's going to pan out. This is real, and this is the reality. And as much as we wish it were different, it is not going to be. So accepting it is a fundamental starting point, accepting this as a reality. Now, we can put our head into the ground like the ostrich and pretend that life is just going to blow away and we'll get back to normal, and that's not going to happen. And we can peer very deeply, and some of us who believe in supernatural assistance of all kinds, we can go to look at our astrologer to see whether there is a prediction in the future. And I think we'll be wasting our time. It is our responsibility, it's in our hands. We need to grasp the reality and see what is it that we can do to remain relevant during this challenging period. Now, when we run our businesses under steady state normal condition, A disproportionate amount of our time is spent on the profit and loss account of the company. Now, under these circumstances, I think the shift has to be disproportionately towards the balance sheet of the company. Let me talk a little bit about what I mean. We need to build a very strong cash reserve in all our businesses in order to be able to weather the storm. Now, this is not rocket science, but to do that, the traditional cash management strategies, the boundaries with which we operated in terms of how we manage cash in the past is no longer adequate. We need to expand boundaries. I'll give you an example. For instance, over a period of time, as our businesses grew and as we grew profitable, as we had reserves, we all bought assets. I would call them ego assets, assets of procurement that didn't necessarily add value to our business. Now is the time for us to look deeply into those kinds of assets and liquidate them. I know these are very emotional decisions, but this is where we need to step outside of our comfort zone, outside the normalcy of what determines our behavior, and really look at what is good for the business. You may even say, oh, markets are so bad that I may not realize the assets, but visualize 5 years from now, you want to look back and say, I wish I had liquidated those assets. You don't want to be in that situation. Irrespective of market conditions, you need to look at how to bring cash into the business. Our own experience, we also have assets. We have got land and building in different parts of the country, in different parts of the world actually. And we are very clear that none of these are going to be emotionally be a barrier for us. We have decided that wherever there is a possibility and wherever there is a value that we can get, we are going to dispose of assets. So, managing the cash in a very non-traditional form is the order of the day. The second aspect of remaining relevant is to look at our cost structure with a completely, totally new pair of eyes. Now, as we built our businesses over the years, we have layered costs in every cost heading. Some costs that start with a nice to have, like for instance, I'm giving a very pedestrian example. When our travel rules were to travel by train from, let's say, Coimbatore to Chennai, we kind of said, oh, now it's nice to have to put in air travel. So all these nice to have costs over a period of time became need to have costs. Not necessarily for the delivery of the business results, but for the overall envelope of saying we need to have this kind of soft luxuries around us. We need to really look deeply into these costs and be very mercenary about what is the cost that is really need to have, and all the nice to have elements of these costs have to be peeled away and eliminated. Now, I would like to move on to the next battle, which is the battle to protect people. We have, as business managers, as business owners, we have a fundamental responsibility, particularly so under these trying conditions. Responsibility towards protecting employment and the financial security of our people. Let us understand, maybe most of us in this webinar have been lucky to have the financial means to be able to weather this without much of a problem. But we got to remember there are millions and millions of people out there who need their daily sustenance of employment, in order to conduct their lives. And we have employees in our company who are also falling into that category. So it's very important that we take this responsibility seriously. If we don't, then we would be adding to the problem caused by this pandemic and not necessarily solving for it. People at the bottom of the pyramid are facing a large challenge at this time than compared to people like us, and we have a social responsibility. In LG, we took a conscious call in the month of April that we are not going to let go of people and we are not going to cut the salary of anybody. But we did defer a certain percentage of salary for a certain category of people at the top of the organization. So the bottom of our organization is fully protected in terms of employment and in terms of their complete financial security. We believe it is a tough decision. It is an even tougher decision to sustain. But this is something that we have to do as social responsible citizens. And in my opinion, business organizations have a big social responsibility. Now, just to give you an example, I mean, a lot of companies and a lot of businesses have suffered because of migrant labor. Now, look at what is the root cause of it. We looked at labor as a cost heading rather than as an asset, right? Now, when you treat people like as a cost heading, then they will reciprocate also in the same way. Now, all the migrant labor who came from all over the country to our town, to our state, they came in as guests, and that too opportunistic guests, and we were opportunistic hosts. We never created a home for them. Now, the real challenge is how can we create a home? And therefore, we are able to manage these kinds of crises a lot better in the future. Now, I'll move on to the third battle. Most important, I believe, is the battle to grow. It is important in this, it's very difficult under times like this to be very optimistic. But if you don't remain optimistic, if you don't continue to believe in the future of the purpose of your organization and the opportunity and be optimistic about the future of the world, then you are going to take decisions that are going to dig weaken your own foundation. And that's not a good thing. So it's important that you remain extremely optimistic. And in fact, you probably need to dig into your optimism well deeper than you would normally do under these very challenging times. And you need to do this. Otherwise, you will have a progressive setback, a creeping kind of doubts that could set in, that could distract you from where you need to go. Organizations have purpose, and we need to maintain that purpose, and we need to ensure that we stay the course for the purpose. Now, there are multiple lessons in a crisis. I mean, I'm sure many of you in this audience have gone through some sort of a transformation in your life, whether it's a health transformation or whether it is a business transformation or whether it is a job transformation. All of you know transformations are difficult, they are long, they require perseverance and they require sustenance. But all of you know that at the end of the day, it was a well worth exercise that you did. And it's the same thing right now. We need to transform. Now, transformation takes time. Just to give you an example, LG today, in its journey, the transformation started in the early to mid-90s. So it's been literally a 25-year journey that progressively took us to where we are today. Now, what is the current situation in LG has helped us, and I'll tell you why. Because today, half of our revenue is from outside the country. Now, when this pandemic hit the whole world, India was the only country that locked down as much as it did compared to the rest of the world. Now, in April, May and June, there was a challenge in India, but our businesses in the rest of the world they were affected, but they were not as affected. They were not as badly affected. As a consequence, as an organization, we believe we were in a better place than many of the organizations that were extremely India dependent. Now, this is a lesson for all of us. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not talking about Make in India. I don't want to get into those categories and arguments. But the fundamental thing is the opportunities in the world are exponentially bigger in most of the businesses that we are in. Now, the biggest lesson for us is how can we reduce our dependence on India and increase our dependence on the rest of the world. It doesn't mean shrink the size of the business in India, but increase the size of our businesses globally. So in a relative sense, India has a lower impact on the entire operations of the business. So this is really something that all of us need to do. And like I said, this is a transformation. It takes time, but believe me, that transformation is well worth it. So these are some of the points that I wanted to share with all of you today. And again, thank you very much for this opportunity. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Again, thanks for your patience listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jairam sir. That was very clear. And of course, I think you harped on that terminology or word transformation. And I think that is something that a lot of us are actually looking forward to, and it's probably started also. There are a few questions that have come in, and I thought I'll start off with this first question, which is addressed to you by Mr. B.K. Balakrishnan. And he wants to know how to build confidence in both business and family to overcome these economic challenges. Please suggest a few simple tips to design strategy for small business entrepreneurs.
Wow, that's a big question. I mean, it's not a simple answer, but I will try and see. For me, confidence comes from being informed and being very visceral about your data and your information. It's not about confidence. Doesn't come from bombastic statements and very emotional phrases. So if you take your business, you need to look at a very visceral, data-driven level. What's the opportunity that you have? And what is it that you can provide disproportionately better than your competitors? And then go after that in a very focused manner. You don't try to boil the ocean. Don't try to win a popularity contest. Play the game as you have chosen to do, and you will win.
Yes, there's this question from Gayatri Rajmohan, and she had actually mentioned it. It was a very broad question, but I thought I'll sort of point it to you. What economic innovations has COVID-19 brought into our society and or into our thinking?
I'm not an expert on economics, so I can't really talk about the innovations in the field of economics. But what this crisis has brought to our thing, I mean, it's not something that we'd like to wish on everybody, but it is there and it's a reality. We might as well accept it. Look at it as an opportunity to say, okay, what's all the fat and inefficiencies that we have built in the system and that we can shed? Because see, there are two types of crises. A crisis that hits only you, which makes it very difficult, or a crisis that hits everyone, that gives you the opportunity to think deeply and widely about how to change and transform yourself, right? And this is one such huge opportunity. I see it as a huge opportunity to cleanse ourselves. Yeah.
Another question that has been addressed is when every corporate business continuity plan is shattered due to the pandemic, what strategy a consultancy professional company or the construction industry, which purely depends on prospering corporates, has to adopt in this pandemic scenario?
So my understanding is you're asking what are the business opportunities for consulting organizations?
Yes.
Now again, today you need to be aligned to what are the challenges that the companies are facing, and if you're able to provide solutions to those challenges, it's not like companies are completely agnostic or abhorring costs. But today they are much more value focused in terms of how to gain value from expenditure that they are doing. So if you are able to deliver value-based services that are aligned to the compulsions of businesses today, and you're able to demonstrate value, I don't see companies not wanting to spend money on.
A question that has been asked to almost all the panelists is, will we ever come back to normal?
Oh, absolutely. You have to have faith that you will come back to normal. The normal may be very different in terms of what is expected, behaviors and all that. But the world has gone through multiple crises in the past, and the world has always moved ahead. In the short term, we may not see it. When you're in the middle of the storm, it is difficult for you to visualize the calm seas that are outside of it, right? But you have to have faith that there is a calm sea there and you're going through the storm. And I'm very confident that the world will come back. It is a matter of time. And we have to be optimistic. And we are the engines of that world becoming a better place, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
With that very positive note, thank you very much. I think we've just run out of time for all these questions. Thank you very much, Jairam sir. Your clarity of thought and expression was very, very appreciable. And thank you very much for having spent your time, valuable time with us this evening.